Welcome back to Beyond the Comfort Zone Talking Shit with KING-KAMBUF. We're diving into a document today that is, well, it's pretty exceptional in its scope and ambition.
Yeah,
This is definitely not your standard architecture firm white paper.
not at all. We are dissecting the KAMBUF National Building Design Command Brief and National Projects by the services of KING-KAMBUF PS Architecture Design Studios.
That is a mouthful.
It is, but it needs to be. This material is, it's a high-level strategic document. It's outlining nothing less than the digital nervous system for a Pan-African and Diaspora network.
Exactly. The digital nervous system. I love that phrasing because when we talk about nation building, you usually think about parliament buildings or highways, big physical things.
Mm-hmm. Concrete and steel.
But this brief, it argues the future is built on something far less visible, but infinitely more crucial.
The digital infrastructure.
And the source material maps out 10 highly specific, really ambitious schemes across multiple continents.
And the unifying force across all 10 of them is just crystal clear. It's written right at the top. Afro-Digital infrastructure and data sovereignty for KAMBUF City-States and Diaspora Networks.
Right. That framing immediately tells you the goal isn't just, profit maximization.
No, not at all. It's strategic control. It's about resilience.
The core premise, and this really drives every single structural decision in the document, is that digital infrastructure is the nervous system of nation building.
Yes.
It has to be deployed not as imported technology, but as a sovereign strategic asset.
And our mission, as we unpack this brief for you, the listener, is really to see how that grand vision translates into, concrete engineering and architectural mandates.
We're talking about things you can actually build.
Exactly. Resilient fiber optic corridors, sovereign data centers, localized edge computing nodes, real physical stuff.
But, and I think this is the crucial pivot, the thing that elevates this brief beyond just a technical spec sheet, it recognizes that great design means absolutely nothing if it can't actually get built and funded in these really complex environments.
That's the critical overlay. It's the reality check.
Right.
The document introduces what it calls a rotating master challenge focus.
Right.
Which basically ensures the teams don't just, dream up futuristic concepts that are impossible to execute. For this entire set of 10 schemes, the focus is squarely on procurement, finance, and delivery.
So let me get this straight. If you draw a beautiful state-of-the-art data center, you are immediately required to show where the money's coming from, the contracting method, the local workforce component, and the specific risk governance tailored to that exact location.
You got it. It's architecture married to high finance and logistics.
That's incredible.
It is. The goal is to enforce viability from day one. The challenge is linking a high-level policy mandate like data sovereignty directly to a granular design decision, like what kind of cooling system or foundation you're going to use.
So it turns the design brief into an executive execution document.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with that central, non-negotiable idea of sovereignty. What does establishing a sovereign digital backbone actually look like physically on the ground?
Well, it's really defined by control over the access points. The brief insists on 2 layers of physical control. Layer 1 is the resilient fiber optic corridors within the continent itself.
Okay, so connecting the cities and regions.
Right. But layer 2, which is maybe even more strategically crucial, is the development of new undersea cables connecting African and diaspora hubs.
Why is controlling the underwater cable routes so vital for sovereignty? Isn't having the data center on your soil enough?
That's a great question. But no, because if you rely entirely on cables that are controlled and landed by external powers, your traffic is always subject to their jurisdiction.
And their potential surveillance.
And their surveillance, even if your data centers are local. By establishing their own Africa to diaspora links, they create sovereign controlled arteries for data.
So the traffic stays within their ecosystem.
Exactly. It hugely reduces latency, and it eliminates those external choke points.
So the physical act of laying a cable on the ocean floor is literally an act of enforcing data independence.
It is. And the brief mandates that the design itself must embed 4 non-negotiable elements in every single scheme, right from the foundational concept.
Okay, what are they?
So first, obviously, data sovereignty. And that doesn't just mean where the physical server sits, but who owns the fiduciary responsibilities for that data.
Got it.
Second, robust cybersecurity defenses, and specifically designed to protect against nation-state actors, not just, some kid in a basement.
A whole different level of threat.
A whole different level. Third is local content creation. The design has to actively include spaces and systems that encourage and host local innovation, local apps, local digital media.
And the fourth point, that brings us back to equity.
Right, it does. Digital inclusion.
Yeah.
This mandate is there to ensure that this expensive high-level infrastructure doesn't just serve the capital cities and the big corporations.
It has to extend access and training to informal settlements, to rural communities.
That holistic approach is, I think, the strategic genius here. But let's circle back for a second to that master challenge, procurement and delivery.
Right.
Because this really dictates the reality check for every single one of these schemes.
If the design is great, the money has to follow. So how does the brief make sure the financing vehicles and the procurement models are actually baked into the design from the start?
Well, the design has to be adaptable. It has to be able to fit multiple financial instruments. So for a project with a high social return, you might look at donor or city funding.
All right.
For a project with high carbon reduction metrics, you design it specifically to qualify for green bonds. The design features themselves, like using liquid cooling or solar arrays, they become line items that literally satisfy the requirements of the financing partner.
Wow. So the structural engineer has to understand the requirements of an ESG investor. That is a really unique constraint.
Absolutely. And it doesn't stop there. The brief mandates the development of local workforce capacity. This isn't just a nice-to-have. It's a core design requirement.
How so?
Data center campuses must include vocational training centers. The materials you choose, like modular prefab units, they have to be procured locally whenever possible to stimulate that whole ecosystem.
This sounds incredibly complex to manage. I mean, you're building 10 massive, disparate projects across different political and physical landscapes, all under one unified system.
It is. It's hugely complex. And that's why the working method outlined in the brief is so crucial.
And what's that?
It says designers must operate across 5 scales simultaneously. You can't just focus on the building. You have to think from the object.
The object, like a server rack.
Exactly. A server rack or a specific climate control unit, all the way up to the building itself.
And then from the building, you move out to the immediate environment.
Yes. You scale up to the district. How does the data center integrate its power and fiber into the immediate industrial or urban area? Then you go up again to the city region, linking logistics and economic zones.
And then the final, biggest scale.
The ultimate goal. The trans-border systems, linking all 10 schemes across countries and continents into one seamless digital environment.
So that holistic requirement ensures that a decision about, say, a building material in rural Zambia has a direct impact on the financial resilience of the whole trans-border connectivity corridor.
It forces optimization across the entire chain.
It forces strategic coherence.
Exactly.
Okay, let's transition now into the specifics, because this is where it gets really interesting. Starting with West Africa, which the brief clearly designates as the immediate commercial and digital gateway. We're grouping schemes 1, 3, and 9 here.
Right. And scheme 1, focused on Lagos, Nigeria, is really the foundational piece. It's the Lagos Diaspora Digital Node and undersea cable landing.
This is where that sovereign digital backbone physically meets the rest of the world.
It's the front door. The core challenge here is establishing a secure, resilient landing site for that new undersea fiber, the one connecting West Africa with diaspora hubs in the Caribbean and the U.S.
And the site is so critical, the engineering has to reflect that level of risk.
And this is where the architectural detail becomes a matter of national security. The design must include a seismic-resistant vault for the cable landing station and a raised flood platform for the data hub facility next to it.
Okay, hold on. Why seismic resistance? Lagos is on a coastal plain. It's not typically known for massive earthquakes.
No, it's not. But it's about systemic risk mitigation. Submarine cables are incredibly vulnerable right at the shore entry point.
Right where they come out of the water.
Exactly. And if that cable is disrupted due to any kind of ground movement, whether it's a minor seismic event or just coastal erosion that's getting worse with climate change, the entire digital artery is severed.
So the vault is designed to be completely impervious.
It has to be. It ensures the single most critical asset, that physical cable connection, remains operational no matter what.
And the raised flood platform, that's a more obvious one. It's directly addressing climate change. Lagos is highly, highly susceptible to coastal flooding.
Correct. And data centers have to maintain uptime 24/7, 365. The raised platform ensures operational continuity and protects, multi-million-dollar IT assets from catastrophic water damage.
It transforms a standard building into a climate-resilient piece of national utility.
It does. because the failure of this one node would be an economic catastrophe. So that architectural decision is really a risk transfer decision.
And the implementation, it dictates a public-private partnership. So the government plus a private cable consortium.
And you can see that partnership reflected in the design, which has to accommodate a phased rollout.
What does that look like?
Cable landing first, get the connection secure. Then you build out the data hub, and finally you expand the local edge node network out from there.
The public communication here, even the poster design they suggest, it reinforces that seriousness.
It does. It's simple and defiant. KAMBUF logos. Digital Sovereignty Gateway. There's no ambiguity about the strategic intent.
Okay, so from Lagos, we move to Scheme 3, which is Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, Sub-Regional Data and Trade Gateway. This project seems to focus much more heavily on trade facilitation.
It does, particularly on supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA.
So the core challenge is co-locating these high-density data services right alongside SMEs that are focused on digital exports and outsourcing.
Right, and to handle that high demand for computing, I mean, you're supporting potentially thousands of AFCFTA businesses, the design has to achieve extreme energy efficiency and do it in a tropical climate.
And which leads us directly to the specific technical mandate they've given. It says they have to design a liquid cooling system for server racks.
And this is a perfect example of that link between engineering and finance we talked about.
How so?
In a hot, humid environment like Abidjan, traditional air cooling is just grossly inefficient. It leads to a high power usage effectiveness, or PUE.
Meaning you spend a ton of energy just cooling the building, not running the computers.
A ton. But liquid cooling, which circulates a special fluid directly over the server components, it radically reduces that cooling overhead. It drops the PUE significantly.
And why does reducing the PUE matter so much, beyond just, saving on the electricity bill?
Because the financing angle for this specific project is explicitly financing via green-blue bond issuance.
Ah, okay.
And those green and blue bonds require the project to meet really stringent environmental and sustainability metrics. So by designing for hyper-efficiency with liquid cooling, the structural team is literally writing the project into compliance for lower-cost, sustainability-focused capital.
So if the design had just chosen standard air conditioning,
the necessary green financing likely wouldn't be available. The project might not even happen.
that structural choice is a financial tool. That is genuinely fascinating.
It connects everything.
All right, so finally, in West Africa, we look at Scheme 9, the Accra Tema Ghana AFCFTA Trade Campus. This one is all about creating seamless physical and digital trade flows right near the Tema port.
Yeah, this campus needs to act as a digital overlay for the physical logistics. The core challenge is ensuring high velocity, ready for export digital services and logistics data.
And the design space prompts they list really show this blend. It says export startup pods, a dedicated data hub for SMEs, and critically, a cold chain module.
Right. And the inclusion of a cold chain module tells you this infrastructure isn't abstract. It's not just about websites and apps.
No, it's about real perishable goods. Vaccines, fresh produce, high-value exports that need real-time, uninterrupted temperature monitoring.
The data hub has to ensure that the digital paperwork for a refrigerated container is ready the moment it arrives at the port. That minimizes physical inspection delays and, spoilage.
So the required systems metric here focuses on minimizing friction, things like customs clearance time reduction and minimizing dwell time at the port. This transition leads us nicely into East Africa and the specialized corridors. The focus seems to shift here from those big commercial gateways to deep inclusion and some hyper-specific logistics requirements.
It does. In Scheme 2 in Nairobi, Kenya, is perhaps the most socially challenging of them all. This is the Smart Campus and Community Digital Hub.
And the site context is explicitly stated as informal settlements, using Kibera as the primary example.
This project is where that digital inclusion mandate gets directly tested. The core challenge is providing affordable digital access, co-working spaces, training labs, and pay-as-you-go services.
And integrating community co-design into the final product.
Which means the designers cannot just drop a monolithic, intimidating structure in the middle of the community. It won't work.
So what's the solution?
The key procurement detail is the use of modular prefab digital hub units that are procured locally.
Okay, and that's a deliberate choice.
Very deliberate. It's to ensure rapid decentralized deployment and to create local jobs by sourcing the materials and assembly from nearby manufacturers.
But doesn't using locally produced modular units, doesn't that risk issues with quality control or, technological obsolescence?
That's the trade-off. It is. It's a calculated risk, but it's a risk you take in favor of speed, local capacity building, and cost control.
Because monolithic construction in a sensitive community context is slow, it's disruptive, and it's almost always over budget.
Exactly. Modular construction allows for a phased, incremental deployment that can actually adapt to shifting community needs and financing cycles. It's a form of risk governance through decentralization.
The implementation relies on a mix of city and donor funding. They cite the EU Global Gateway alongside a private ICT operator, so the money is aligned with the mission.
It is. And the required ESG metrics are entirely non-financial. They're tracking the percentage of local user engagement and the number of ICT skills trained.
So success is measured in human capability uplift, not just return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's pivot to a really hyper-specific logistics corridor. Scheme 6, the Ethiopia-Djibouti Horn Edge Cloud and Cold Chain Data Services. This one links the digital backbone directly to that vital rail line.
The one connecting landlocked Ethiopia to its port on the Red Sea.
Right.
This is architecture in service of critical national supply chain resilience, especially for agricultural goods.
So the core challenge is supporting cold chain logistics for agribusiness, and that requires integrated edge computing right near the rail corridor, but doing it in a, hot, arid, and often remote zone.
And the technical details specified to handle that brutal, arid climate is an elevated rack system with passive cooling.
Okay, let's compare this to Abidjan.
Good idea. Abidjan has humidity and, for the most part, reliable power for that high-tech liquid cooling. The Horn of Africa often lacks grid stability and reliable water sources.
So passive cooling becomes a necessity, not a choice.
It becomes a survival trait for the infrastructure. Elevating the racks keeps them away from the ground heat and the constant dust. The whole design is about maximizing natural airflow and thermal mass.
So you're accepting a slightly lower PUE efficiency.
In exchange for vastly higher operational resilience against power cuts and water scarcity. It's a design solution that's tailored to extreme environmental scarcity.
And the outcome here is quantified against logistics efficiency. They're tracking TE-OR equivalents, that's 20-foot equivalent units per hour, and latency to farm.
And that's the definitive link. How quickly can a farmer or a logistics coordinator get essential data temperature readings, shipment status back to their operational center? If that latency is high, the risk of spoilage goes way up.
And this raises that really important question we touched on earlier. How does data sovereignty directly influence something like food security and logistics?
Well, if that critical temperature data is being processed and stored on a foreign-owned server somewhere else,
it could potentially be delayed or manipulated or even just become inaccessible during a diplomatic dispute.
Exactly. By owning the entire data path from the farm to the port, via a sovereign low-latency platform, the nation guarantees operational continuity for its most sensitive cargo. It's protecting its own food supply chain.
The data infrastructure is literally acting as a security system for perishable goods and trade flows.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, so moving south now, we're going to analyze schemes 4, 5, and 7. These deal with resource management, cross-border infrastructure, and some major industrial hubs.
Right, and Scheme 4 is the wide-ranging one. The SADC Digital Corridor, Zambia, Mozambique, South Africa. This is a classic challenge of transborder connectivity across vast, often remote distances.
The core challenge is basically eliminating the digital borders, ensuring low latency delivery and resilient power, which usually means renewables, especially in remote border towns where the utility infrastructure is, weak or non-existent.
And to solve that delivery challenge in these really isolated locations, the brief mandates the use of modular skid-mounted data centers.
Okay, skid-mounted unit. What is that exactly?
It's essentially a containerized, self-contained data center. It's built, tested, and sealed in a factory before it's shipped, and just dropped onto a prepared concrete pad on site.
So why are these skid-mounted units superior to just building a traditional building in this transborder context?
They allow you to bypass all the procurement and delivery nightmares inherent in remote sites.
Like sourcing specialized labor, material transport.
Dealing with lengthy local permitting processes across multiple different jurisdictions, you minimize all that local construction risk. You truck it in, you connect the power and the fiber, and it's operational in a fraction of the time.
So it's speed and consistency prioritized over bespoke architecture.
For this application, yes.
Yeah.
And success is measured by eliminating the lag. They're measuring border latency improvement and the rural connectivity percentage.
Okay, next up is Scheme 5, a really high-stakes specialized use case. The Angola DRC Zambia Copperbelt Digital Mining Services Hub.
Yeah, this connects high-tech computing directly to the backbone of the extractive industry in that region.
The core challenge here is deploying high-performance computing, or HPC, for mining and logistics data.
Things like geological modeling, optimizing supply chain routes, processing just vast quantities of sensor data from the mines.
While also guaranteeing access for local SMEs. It's not just for the big mining corporations.
Right, but HPC clusters are incredibly dense, they're heavy, they generate a ton of heat, they require specialized physical infrastructure.
Which leads to the structural detail they specify, designing a structural slab for heavy rack loads.
Yeah.
This sounds incredibly technical, but what's the actual insight here? Why is the thickness of the floor a strategic decision?
Because conventional data centers, they're designed for standard office loads, maybe, 50 to 100 pounds per square foot.
Okay.
High-performance computing clusters, packed with specialized GPUs and servers, can push that load past 300 or even 400 pounds per square foot. An ordinary building slab would crack. It would fail.
So the architectural decision to design a specialized reinforced structural slab is really a declaration.
It is. It's a declaration that this building is not just commercial property. It is specialized, critical, national technology infrastructure. It's designed to withstand immense physical stress.
Because if that slab fails, the entire regional mining supply chain, which relies on that data, it just grinds to a halt.
Exactly. The structural engineering is literally carrying the geopolitical weight of a major global commodity. It's a perfect example of connecting the physical detail to the strategic why.
And the implementation reflects this high value. It relies on a partnership with the mining companies, and it's financed via an extractive sector tech fund.
So it directly ties the data center's existence to the industry it serves. It creates a self-sustaining funding mechanism. They have skin in the game.
Okay, finally for this section, Scheme 7 brings us to North Africa. The Morocco Tangermed Digital Port and Smart Logistics Hub. This is one of the continent's biggest success stories in terms of industrial port complexes.
Yeah, it's a monster. The challenge here is integration perfection. You have to link these vast port operations, logistics data analytics, and diaspora trade portals, all under strict digital sovereignty requirements for global trade.
The technical detail they specify is fascinating. It's the structuralites interface for a digital crane beam and a specialized logistics data command center.
Think about those massive ship-to-shore cranes, the STS cranes you see at any major port.
Right.
The brief mandates that these cranes cease being just heavy lifting equipment. They have to become giant, slow-moving data sensors.
So you're embedding sensors right into the crane beam itself.
Exactly. To stream real-time data on container weight, load balance, precise location, operational efficiency. All that data feeds directly into the Logistics Data Command Center.
Which prevents stacking errors and bottlenecks.
And that links directly to the ESG focus on PM 2.5 reduction.
Okay, how does a smart crane reduce air pollution?
Well, by using real-time data analytics, the command center can perfectly optimize the movement of trucks in and out of the port yards.
Less idling, faster turnaround times, fewer traffic jams.
Exactly. And reduced traffic means reduced diesel consumption, which translates directly into lower particulate matter PM 2.5 pollution, so you're improving air quality for the port workers and the surrounding communities.
Digital optimization yielding measurable environmental and health results.
That's the goal.
So we've covered the African continent nodes, which really focus on securing regional connectivity, resource management, industrial efficiency. Now we need to shift focus to the diaspora bridge.
Right, the strategic connection points outside the continent that anchor global access and these sovereign trade lanes.
These next two schemes, 8 and 10, they feel strategically vital, but also fraught with some complex compliance and political hurdles.
They are, because they involve building sovereign-aligned infrastructure on foreign soil.
Which brings us to Scheme 8, the USA Savannah Diaspora Trade and Digital Hub. And here's where it gets really interesting. You're designing infrastructure that's meant to enforce African data sovereignty, but it's physically located right on U.S. soil.
Yeah, the core challenge is twofold. First, supporting African diaspora SMEs in their import-export logistics. Second, ensuring rigorous compliance for any goods entering the U.S. market, especially for cold chain e-commerce.
And it has to integrate seamlessly with the huge Port of Savannah network.
For the e-fulfillment module and the compliance zone, the architectural detail they specify is the use of a long-span CLT roof over flexible bays.
CLT, cross-laminated timber.
Exactly. And that's a highly specific, sustainable material choice.
So why use it here?
Well, first, it satisfies the environmental component of the ESG mandate, using renewable timber. Second, the long-span capability allows for these huge, flexible, column-free spaces inside.
Which is critical in logistics.
It is. Because the space needs to be able to quickly shift from, say, high-stack storage to a pharmaceutical cold chain inspection bay, which is essential for passing U.S. compliance checks. The building has to be inherently adaptable to really complex regulatory demands.
But doesn't choosing an alternative material like CLT, doesn't that add complexity in the U.S. regulatory and procurement environment, which is typically, very focused on steel and concrete?
It does. It absolutely raises the initial procurement hurdle, but it also demonstrates a real commitment to the broader ESG goals, and it provides a long-term operational flexibility that standard construction might not.
And the workforce focus here is telling.
It is. They're not just training tech workers. The brief says to train compliance officers and logistics tech trainers.
To make sure the people who operate the hub understand both the U.S. regulatory environment and the sovereign digital platform they're using.
It's a human bridge as much as a physical one.
Okay, the final scheme, Scheme 10, takes us to the Caribbean. The Barbados Bridgetown Digital Cargo and Trade Hub, a small but vital island node supporting diaspora links and critical port resilience.
The core challenge here is navigating a really dense, multi-purpose port. It handles both cruise ships and cargo, which requires strategic flow separation so they don't get in each other's way.
And on top of that, the mandate requires supporting diaspora trade and critically electrifying the port systems, specifically those massive ship-to-shore cranes.
Electrifying a whole port is a massive infrastructure commitment. The key detail they specify is that the STS crane beam and tie-down, with its digital sensors, has to be designed to be shore power ready from day one.
What does that mean, shore power ready?
It's a design-to-utility mandate. It means the cranes have to be ready to run off dedicated power from the shore, from the grid. That eliminates the noisy, polluting, and incredibly expensive diesel generators that usually run on.
And the embedded digital sensors are there to monitor performance and consumption.
Right, tracking the efficiency metric crane kilowatt box. The implementation here is focused entirely on minimizing operational vulnerability. Specifically, they want to track no cargo days avoided.
Improving efficiency and resilience against things like weather or fuel shortages.
Which, for an island nation, that kind of infrastructure is absolutely vital for food imports and for trade stability.
Okay, so across these 10 schemes, we've seen demands ranging from a small modular kiosk in Nairobi to a hyper-specialized HPC hub in the Copperbelt. But the common, unrelenting thread tying them all together is that master challenge.
Procurement, finance, and delivery.
Yes.
So we need to pull back now and just synthesize the blueprint they've created, because the financial and the procurement structures are, in their own way, as innovative as the engineering itself.
Let's review that procurement blueprint. The brief uses this really diverse portfolio of financial models, and they're explicitly tailored to each scheme's location and its social goals.
Yeah, look at the spectrum. For the high-value, high-risk infrastructure like a Lagos cable landing, that's Scheme 1, the brief mandates a structured public-private partnership, PTP.
Which is essential for spreading the risk and leveraging the private sector's expertise in actually operating a cable.
Exactly. But then you look at the highly social and geographically dispersed Nairobi hubs, Scheme 2, and standard commercial finance is just not going to work there.
No.
The funding has to be leveraged from donor city funding, like the EU Global Gateway, because the primary return is social and skills-based, not monetary throughput.
Right, and then for the capital-intensive, high-efficiency builds like the Abidjan Trade Gateway, the one with the liquid cooling.
That one relies on specialized bond issuance, specifically those green and blue bonds. The low PUE design is literally monetizing its own environmental efficiency to get cheaper funding.
Then you have the highly specialized industry-funded schemes, the Extractive Sector Tech Fund for the Copperbelt Hub,
which ensures that the sector benefiting most from the HPC infrastructure is the sector that's paying for it. It creates that self-sustaining funding loop.
And even the diaspora hubs have these innovative models. The Savannah Hub, Scheme 8, that relies on a pooled SME contract model.
Right, where the risk and the cost of the shared logistics are aggregated across many small businesses. It makes high-end logistics affordable for the diaspora export community.
What's so fascinating here is how the financing vehicle is explicitly designed to suit the local context and the partners. You can't separate the budget from the design.
You cannot. If the engineering doesn't meet the environmental compliance of the green bond, the money just dries up.
Right.
If the procurement model isn't decentralized and modular for Nairobi, the donor funding for inclusion might not be released. The structural design team is, in effect, acting as the financial structuring team.
And beyond just the financing, the brief is relentless on quantifying success. It demands these detailed performance annotations that are tied directly to those nation-building goals.
The metrics are accountability tools. Pure and simple, they measure both the physical throughput and the strategic compliance.
So for pure efficiency and speed, they require latency reduction measured in milliseconds and PUE, power usage effectiveness.
And if the latency is high, the project fails the resilience test. It's that simple.
And for sovereignty, the measure is explicitly the data sovereignty percentage,
which is the quantifiable percentage of data storage that is localized within those designated sovereign nodes. No guesswork.
And for inclusion and the environment, the targets are hyper-specific. Local job creation and training slots are tracked to ensure skills transfer.
And the environmental impact is monitored with things like Côte and data and those crucial PM2.5 reduction metrics, especially at port sites like Tangermed. It ensures that the digital optimization actually benefits the health of the local population.
These metrics, they fundamentally redefine what infrastructure success even means.
They do.
It's not just about whether the data center is operational, it's about whether that operation is measurably improving local skills, reducing emissions, and securing national data control.
Absolutely. They enforce those 4 non-negotiable mandates we discussed right at the top.
And finally, the brief incorporates these crucial precedent studies. It insists on learning from past projects to mitigate risk, which provides a really necessary reality check before millions are committed.
Yeah, the document refuses to operate in a vacuum. It brings in both success stories and some pretty serious cautionary tales to harden the final design strategy.
On the success side, the brief highlights the Tangermed port expansion in Morocco. Cited for its rapid growth and the successful integration of the port with the industrial and logistics zones around it.
And this precedent directly validates that holistic, simultaneous design approach used in Scheme 7. It proves that if you link the port, the industrial parks, and the digital infrastructure from day one, you accelerate growth exponentially.
And the Copperbelt extractive sector pilots are cited as a success for showing that data hubs and mining logistics can successfully co-locate and share infrastructure, which justifies that highly specialized Scheme 5 design.
But the cautionary tales are, I would argue, even more important.
Why is that?
Because they directly inform the risk mitigation in the delivery challenge. The brief specifically notes budget and contractor risks from the rail delays on Nairobi's BRT Line 3.
That's a direct warning. A great piece of infrastructure can be functionally useless if its adjacent necessary infrastructure, like a bus line or a rail link, isn't delivered on time.
Precisely. You can design the best data center in the world in Lagos, but the cautionary tale from deep-sea ports without landside railroad integration underperforming.
Referencing the lessons from the Lekki port waiting on its connection.
Right. That mandates that the digital hub design must explicitly account for the readiness of its landside logistics connections. If the railway isn't there, the digital campus has to be designed to accommodate temporary, maybe even more expensive, logistics roads until that rail is finally completed.
The methodology insight that they've gleaned from these lessons learned, which the brief requires teams to continually update, it's very clear. Things like modular data hub procurement beats monolithic builds.
And diaspora-linked infrastructure must embed local workforce from day one. It summarizes the entire philosophy. Speed, adaptability, local sourcing, and community integration are essential survival strategies.
They're not optional.
They're not.
This has been an extraordinary look into a document that really treats structural architecture as geopolitical strategy. It's a blueprint for building resilience, sovereignty, and connectivity across continents, all seen through the lens of concrete slabs, fiber optic vaults, and specialized cooling systems.
It's a powerful illustration of the KING-KAMBUF closing directive, which I think summarizes the entire ethos of the brief.
Let's end with that directive. Mobility is power. Digital infrastructure is sovereignty. We design the networks, data systems, and delivery frameworks that cut latency to milliseconds, bypass reliance on external platforms, and connect Africa and the diaspora into one sovereign ecosystem. Build the backbone, own the nodes, expand the nation.
It's a statement that captures that total integration of physical design, finance, and national ambition.
And it leaves us with this final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. The brief focuses so heavily on designing physical structures, seismic vaults, high-load floor slabs, prefab modules to guarantee digital freedom. If infrastructure is sovereignty, What is the weakest physical link in the global digital ecosystem you rely on every day that is currently owned or controlled by someone you don't trust?
Think about the literal cables under the ocean and the cooling systems in some anonymous building next time you open a high-speed application.
We hope this deep dive into the KAMBUF National Building Design Command Brief and national projects has helped you understand that critical link between physical design and national strategy. Thank you for joining us beyond the comfort zone talking shit with King KAMBUF.
We'll catch you next time.